Hey everyone, welcome, welcome. We're not starting yet, but what I'd like to do is if I can get everyone to kind of move closer to the center and closer to the front so that we can have a nice tight crowd and not too many people on the wings. So yeah, please move in towards the center, move up to the front wherever you can, and get a good view. Thanks, guys. All right, guys. We can get this rolling here. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. This is the inaugural Illuminate Speaker Series program that the Lunar Foundation is putting on. Illuminate is a program. Hey, Carla. Illuminate is a speaker program specifically to connect our community with well-established artists. Artists who we're not here just to inspire, but also to give some reality in kind of like the work that we do and help us get a better perspective on our arts and our arts discipline. So we're really excited. If you don't know, the Lunar Foundation, we're a nonprofit focused on creating economic pathways for artists. Here in Central Texas, we're focused on Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander artists. And you might know us from some of our more large-scale programming like the Austin Dragon Boat Festival or the Night Market Fun, which you might have seen on the slides before we got started. Illuminate is our newest program, and we're really thrilled to launch it here. So first thing is I want to thank ACC Highland Radio, TV, Film Department for hosting us. This partnership really makes working industry professionals accessible to filmmakers and creatives right here in our community. Also, thank you to North Shore Media Productions, our kind of spotlight sponsor, for helping us and supporting us with production today. Amazing crew. And also thank you to MPS Camera and Lighting Austin for our supporting sponsor. They have been such a great part of the filmmaking community in Austin and in Texas. And has been supporting our filmmakers for a long time now. Mark and Meredith are here today. Thank you for coming. Today's just the beginning. The 2026 Illuminate Speaker Series lineup includes makeup designer Jenny Lin, also two-time Emmy Award winning composer Nathan Wang, and then also a prolific portrait photographer Peter Yang, whose work you might have seen on GQ and Rolling Stone, Esquire. But we have a lot of great speakers coming up for the rest of the year. We're adding speakers as we go as well. They're going to be covering multiple different disciplines in the arts, not just in film, but also photography, architecture, and around. So one thing I'd like to ask is some of you guys might see a QR code. We're working with Nielsen right now to do a survey on our local arts scene. And also our local arts consumers. Our hope is that we can really understand the pain points of our local artists and also understand how our community likes to spend their money around arts as well. So we can find programming right at that intersection. So scan the QR code. You might see it up on the slides later. But first and foremost, I'm really excited to introduce our two talent that'll be up here. I'm really excited. Firstly, I'd like to introduce our moderator. Our moderator, Ryan Koo. He's moderating today's conversation. Founder and CEO of No Film School, the world's most popular filmmaking website with over 1 million readers a month. Ryan wrote the first 1,000 posts himself while trying to break into the industry as an outsider with no access, no financing, no connections. His directorial debut, Amateur, is a 2018 Netflix original film that Netflix financed at the script stage. The screenplay was selected for the Sundance Screenwriters Lab, where Ryan received Sundance's first Asian American Fellowship. He won the Webby Award for Best Drama Series and was named one of the Filmmaker magazine's 25 New Faces of Film. He grew up in North Carolina as a half-Chinese kid who didn't look like anyone around him, and he built his career by sharing everything he learned along the way. So thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
For coming to moderate this conversation. I'm very, very excited to introduce Michael Goi. Michael, why don't you come on up? Our guest today is Michael Goi, ASC, ISC. Michael is a 4-time Emmy-nominated cinematographer whose credits include American Horror Story, Glee. My name is Earl. As a director, he helmed the pilot of Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender, episodes of The Rookie and Big Sky, and the viral feature film Megan is Missing. He served 3 terms as the 49th president of the American Society of Cinematographers and received the ASC's 2025 Career Achievement in TV Award. He is of Japanese descent, born and raised in Chicago, and deeply committed to mentoring the next generation of filmmakers. He hosts weekly movie nights at its home theater with 20 to 25 mentees. And if you ever go there, you might get a ride on his train around the property, which I've had the privilege of taking part in. It's really awesome. And I've heard from many people who have been able to go to your house and see these screenings how wonderful experience it is.
Now they're thinking that I live like in this big mansion somewhere with this huge train and stuff like that.
Let's see. More important than anything, he has been helping the next generation of image makers, and that commitment is exactly why he's here today. So before I wrap up, after the talk and the audience Q&A, please stick around. We're going to have a little social afterwards. You can meet Michael, Ryan, the rest of the community, and please silence your phones. We're recording this and live streaming, and so I'll let Ryan take it away.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Unplanned first question. So the train. This is tell us about that. There's a train?
Well, I grew up in Chicago, and we money was very, very tight. So my sister and I would always share a Christmas present, between the two. Usually it was like a Kenner Easy Bake Oven or something like that. And I always wanted to have a train, but we couldn't afford to have a train set. So I would steal chalk from the school and I'd draw railroad tracks around our apartment building, and I'd pretend that I had a train. I was like that kid in the movie Dodeska Den, Dodeska Den, Dodeska Den. I'd pretend I was a train. And finally, I told my wife, I said, I'd like to build a railroad around our house, to have trains that we can ride. And it took 2 years of planning. And she said, don't you think that our kids are going to be tired of trains by the time you finish this? And I said, it's not really for the kids, it's for me. She said, all right, well, let's build your railroad. So we jackhammered all the cement, put in steel rail, re-poured the cement so we could use the driveway, and we have trains that we can ride around the entire house.
Amazing. At the beginning, getting your inspiration to be a cinematographer, a director, was there a particular movie or?
Yes.
Was it a train movie?
No, it was The Graduate. In 1968, my parents were taking me to what they thought was the cartoon matinee, the cartoon festival. But we got there later, and the cartoon festival was over, and then the regular movie was going to run, and the regular movie was The Graduate. And they had no idea what that was, but we decided, well, we're here, we'll just stay and watch it. So I was 8 years old, and we watched this movie, and I'd certainly seen a lot of movies. The earliest movie I can remember seeing was Frankenstein Meets the Space Monster. And the trailer for Mario Bava's Blood and Black Lace, which left an indelible impression on me. But The Graduate was something special because unlike the movies I had seen to that point, there was so much darkness in that movie, and it made me feel a certain way about the characters. And as I watched the movie over and over and over again, I became aware of the fact that the cinematography was making me feel like Dustin Hoffman did in that movie. And that's what really got me interested in the craft of filmmaking. I went to see The Graduate over and over again. The Playboy Theater in Chicago used to run it at 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday nights as part of the Playboy all-night show. And I'd be bugging my parents to take me to go see The Graduate at 2 o'clock in the morning. And finally, when I was about 10 and a half years old, they said, we're sick of seeing this movie, go by yourself. So I'd be taking the subway downtown Chicago at 2 o'clock in the morning to watch The Graduate. It was a different time. You could actually do that as a 10 and a half year old. But that movie, which I've seen hundreds of times in theaters, was really the turning point for me.
one of the most iconic shots of all time with through the leg. I mean, if you're going to be inspired as a cinematographer, it's just such an indelible image. I think people usually start interviews with, how did your career begin? But I'm curious, as a Asian American who often felt like I didn't look like what people expected when I went in for a job interview or for an opportunity, I'm curious how your career didn't begin, if there were false starts or times where you felt like you were struggling and not getting an opportunity. What was that like?
Well, honestly, I'm still waiting for my career to begin. And I understand that I've gotten the ASC Lifetime Achievement Award, and I understand, all these things, but, I've never had the feeling of accomplishment that people talk about, that you reach a certain point and you're there, you're established. That still has kind of not happened for me. My wife will tell you, the frustration about when I wake up every morning. I was like, this is the day I can make something happen, and it kind of never went away and never goes away. So, and I think part of that impetus is what makes me just push so hard. I've never waited for the phone to ring with a job. I was like, okay, what can I create today? What opportunities can I motivate today to make them happen? And we were talking about my train earlier. It's a similar thing with that. It's that I wanted to do it. The Chicago Sun-Times newspaper ran an article on me a couple years ago, and their first line in the article was, Michael Goi does not want to hear about your film idea. And that's largely true, because in that conversation with that reporter, I talked about the fact that the industry attracts a lot of dreamers. A lot of people who have this dream of making movies and dream of telling their stories and stuff like that. And that's fine, but that's not enough. You have to be a doer. You can't just be a dreamer, you have to be a doer. So, what my train actually symbolized, because we've talked about my train when I go to job interviews, and I've shown people, pictures of my railroad, because I was very proud of it when I finished it. And what they got out of that is my passion was to do this thing, and I didn't just dream about it, I actually did it. So what qualities they wanted in a director for that show was not somebody who was just a big dreamer, but somebody who was an actual doer, who could go out and actually accomplish it. And that's the important thing. There are a lot of people who want to get into this industry who have dreams, but they're not prepared to do what it takes to make them real.
According to the internet, which may not be real, the internet's real, but the information on the internet may not be real. At 14, there was a camera truck, and you walked up to it and ended up with a shooting job. So that sounds very much like doing and not dreaming.
Yeah, that's not real. I was 15. No, I was 15 years old. But there was, I had made 8mm and Super 8 movies from the time I was 8 years old until I was 14. And by the time I got to 14, which is when I was entering high school, I wanted to make real professional movies. And that to me was 16mm. So I got a used wind-up 16mm Bolex camera, and the film was so much more expensive than Super 8. I had to make more money somehow. And down the street, while I was trying to figure this out, I saw the aluminum siding truck refinishing a house down the street, and I recognized the name on the side of the truck because they had the worst commercials on Spanish television in Chicago, still photos and with narration and stuff. So I grabbed my camera and 100 feet of black and white 16mm film, and I did a dozen shots of their workers hammering up aluminum siding. And I was yelling at them in English, smile, smile. And it's like they're all, Mexican. They didn't understand what I was saying. But I got all these shots, and I shot the name of the company on the truck and the phone number, and I called the owner of the company, and I said, I just shot your next television commercial. And he's like, really? He processed the film, and he had the footage cut together into a 30-second spot, and he put Spanish narration, put it on the air, paid me $500. So for the rest of my time in high school, I would spend my weekends trying to find companies to do commercials for on spec. So that was my way of really trying to make more money so I can make my personal movies, but it was an entryway into the industry also.
And so you were just footing the bill to have the film stock to shoot something on spec, versus today, if you have a 4K iPhone, it wouldn't cost anything.
Yeah, I mean, today, the access to tools for anybody who says they want to be a filmmaker is really unprecedented. You don't have to get film, you don't have to process it somewhere and stuff, but it still has not really increased the number of people who are actually making movies, because when you have access to all the tools, that's great, but you're confronting the reality in yourself. Do I actually have something to say as a filmmaker? Is there actually a movie that I want to make strong enough to rope together 20 of my friends and make this movie? And that's still a relatively small percentage of people. So there's a lot of discussion amongst the film schools and stuff now about democratization of filmmaking and how it needs to be open and accessible to everybody. But, filmmaking is not a democracy. The person who's willing to fight to make a movie is the person who gets the right to direct a movie. It's just because you have the tools doesn't mean that you're automatically a filmmaker. You have to do something.
Well, speaking of the fight, you go from making commercials for local Chicago businesses all the way to eventually Hollywood. How did you fight your way there, and for your first IMDb credit? What was that fight like?
There was no IMDb at the time.
Touché.
I go back that far, but no, I mean, like everything, it's in this industry. I would say the one thing that I've been good at is reinventing who I am and what I do, because I get dissatisfied very quickly with what I'm doing. And when I moved to Los Angeles, I had already shot 6 low-budget feature films, mostly horror movies, mostly in the Midwest, and over 300 commercials. Feature documentaries for PBS, all that. But when you move to Los Angeles, nobody cares about all that stuff you did, because it was out of the Hollywood system. And so it was really starting over. And that at that time, this was 1991, it was after the last really big recession, when all of the film companies, the smaller film companies that might have hired somebody like me, were going out of business. And so I would go to job interviews, and there would be ASC cinematographers in the room there who were looking to get that job as well. So it took me 6 months before I could get any job, and that job was as a grip on a low-budget martial arts movie that was being shot in Las Vegas. And I had to drive myself out to Las Vegas and put myself up in a ratty motel in order to work on it, which ate up all of my pay for that movie. But I was on a film set, finally. It was a 12-day shoot, and I was on a film set. And somewhere around the 3rd day, because I had done fashion photography in Chicago, and I always kept my cameras with me because I didn't want to leave them in the ratty motel to get stolen while I was on set. The producer said, "Hey, you got nice cameras, take some photos of our action stars." I was like, "Okay, great," and did that. And they said, "Can you operate a film camera?" And I'd done 6 features and stuff, and I was like, "Yeah, I can operate a movie camera." And so they put me on a camera, and they loved the footage, so they made me the 2nd unit director of photography. So now I was shooting all of the action sequences for this low-budget martial arts movie. And then they hired me to be the principal DP for their next two movies. So the fact that by the time I moved to Los Angeles, I refused to leave, even though there was no work, was a big factor. 2 of my friends who were also cinematographers came out to Los Angeles at the same time I did, and they both gave up after 3 or 4 months, and they went back home, and I refused to go back. I said, I'm gonna die in LA, So it was that perseverance, I think. That perseverance really got me my wife. honestly, because, you know, it took 3 marriage proposals before Gina said yes. She said no the first 2 times because she's like, you know, I had been dating actresses for a few years before I met her, and she, you know, she is in the location rental business in Los Angeles, and location agents would come to her office and they see my photo on her desk and they say, oh, you know Michael Goi? And she said, yeah, he's my boyfriend. She says, oh, you're totally not Michael's type. He likes blonde actresses with big boobs, and, you know. And she said, I just want to make sure that I'm what you want. And so the 3rd time I proposed, I said, before you say no, just know this. I have never asked anybody to marry me. I waited until I found the right person, and you're that person. So if you're not ready to marry me, I will wait for you. So it's persistence. It's that dogged, you know, not going to give up.
I see that you're good at pitching yourself. From a psychological standpoint, did you feel like, because obviously we're seeing a theme of persistence here, were your parents supportive of you going into the arts? Were they impressed by anything? I mean, in many Asian families, often nothing is ever good enough, and I'm not saying that from experience at all, but you know, how did that affect you in terms of like building up that persistence?
Well, my family, my mom and dad in Chicago, there was nobody in my family who was even remotely associated with the film industry.
Same.
You know, but and you know what? There's a clip of me delivering, if I can, you know, a speech at when I got my Lifetime Achievement Award. And let me run this first, maybe, because this could be more.
My parents were both born in California, and they were placed in internment camps during World War II. My dad was always a little bitter because he was not allowed to study engineering like he wanted to when he was released from the camps. And they told him he could be either a janitor or a cook. And so my sister Frances and I, we grew up with fairly modest means. I mean, we had sometimes spaghetti for 4 dinners a week, which was cool because I love spaghetti. But when I was 8 years old, my parents asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I said, I want to go to Hollywood and I want to make movies. And my mom said, well, then that's what you should do, because you can be anything you want to be. So tomorrow I'm flying to Chicago to take this to my 96-year-old mother, Kikuno. And also to my sister, Frances, who cares for her 24 hours a day. She enables me to pursue my dream of being a Hollywood filmmaker. Thank you very much.
It's an incredible story.
So yeah, I mean, in that way, even though they didn't understand what the film business was, they supported my desire to do that. And I was always going to go into the military, you know, after high school. All my friends who went to high school, Lane Tech, with me, we were all going to go to military academies. That was the plan. And at the last minute, my sister said, well, you love making movies, but you're the kind of person who goes down a path and you go all the way. And she says, I think if you go to military academy, you're going to stay in the military for the rest of your life until you're the first Japanese general in the US Army and stuff, which is great. But she said, I don't think you're going to make movies. And so I thought about that, and I decided at the very last minute to go to film school instead. And I went to Columbia College in Chicago because it was the cheapest film school, and I could get in and I could have access to equipment and crews to work on films and stuff. And that's what I did, and the rest of my friends went into military academy. Every now and then I would still go on maneuvers with them. I'd go rappelling off the University of Illinois building with them. I'd go auto-rotating in helicopters with them and stuff. But that was the separation for me. You know, and I remember my dad came with me to Columbia College because at the time the entire film department was just like on 2 floors of this warehouse building in Chicago, and he said, "This is where you want to go," instead of like West Point or something. I said, "Yeah, this is where I want to go." And he's like, "Okay," you know.
How many films did you shoot as a DP, cinematographer, before you started transitioning into directing, which I don't know even know how many directing credits you have now, but that's what you've been doing for quite some time now.
Lots. I mean, certainly I shot more than is on IMDb. I mean, I've shot over 60 feature films that had schedules of 8 days or less.
Whew.
You know, that are not on IMDb because either they were not finished, funding ran out in the middle of shooting, or they were finished and they never got picked up for distribution and stuff. So a lot of movies. I was always shooting something because I felt like that was the best way. You know, people say sometimes, well, I'm going to wait for the right film to come along so I can do the kind of work that I know I'm capable of. But the problem with that, the problem with waiting, is that you can spend years waiting for the right movie to come along. And I would just take anything. I adopted the Tommy Lee Jones, really, methodology. He was asked, why did you act in so many crappy exploitation movies in the 1970s? And he said, I was always working as an actor. If I was given 3 crappy scripts, I would choose the least crappy of the 3, but I was always acting. I was not a truck driver. I was not a waiter. I didn't work in a factory. So, you know, that's what I did. I would take whatever was the best opportunity that was open to me, and I would pursue it, and I would do the best that I could at it. So, you know, for a period of time, I became like the king of softcore porn. I shot all those erotic shows that on Skinemax and Showtime that nobody ever says they saw, but somehow they saw anyway. And it's like, you know, I shot almost all of them. I shot all these low-budget martial arts movies where I would shoot 125 setups a day of fight scenes and stuff. And all these experiences made me the director that I am today and the cinematographer that I am today in terms of knowing, you know, how to cut through to the point. I mean, I always tell the people that I'm mentoring, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Because in the panic and the chaos of production, it's really easy to forget the point of why you're doing something. And once you forget the point, then everything is just chaos. Then there's no reason for anything happening. So I never forget that, and that's what guides me. And so, yeah, I just motor through it.
I mean, in softcore, lighting is really important. You know, you got to make people look good, right?
You know,
that's the whole thing.
I think Gloria Leonard said the difference between you know, erotica and pornography is lighting.
You made art, and it could have been, I mean, not that porn isn't art, but, you know.
But it taught me how to light, especially women, beautifully, incredibly quickly. We had to do like 80 setups a day on a 12-hour day for a half-hour show.
Well, as you transitioned into directing, I think your skills as a cinematographer, the hard skills of knowing angles and lighting and everything, I'm sure they've helped you well. And I think we have some clips of stuff that you've done as a director that I think would not have been, you know, the production itself maybe wouldn't have had the idea, or you just knew what was possible because you'd been on set however many hundreds of times. Are there clips that you want to show us with an example? I
mean, you know, for me, I will say cinematography is the same as being a magician, and I'm a magician also. You know, I can make doves appear and bird cages vanish, and I can take people and put them in a cabinet and saw them into 3 pieces and put them back together. I can actually do that stuff. So for me, cinematography especially, directing to a degree, but cinematography especially is about magic. It's about creating that illusion of what you're seeing and making people believe it. And sometimes it's misdirection, having them follow you along this path, and then you deviate from it, but they don't know what the deviation is. So for me, a lot of these techniques had been developed in the 1920s in silent movies before sound came around. I'm a huge fan of silent movies. I think Buster Keaton and F.W. Murnau are geniuses, what they did in their movies. And I carry that forward with me into everything that I do. So I'll show you a clip, and this is just a really simple demonstration of forced perspective. This is a couple of scenes from Avatar, The Last Airbender in season 1, and how we accomplished it. So that thing is 1.5 feet high. And here's another statue thing coming up here. And action. And the crane wraps around. We textured it in post action. Later. Action. But the move and the perspective and the shot was all designed and done in the camera. And people have a tendency to push the digital button as a reflex. Any new tool that comes into the lexicon of visual filmmaking, people want to use it for everything. I mean, remember when Steadicams first came out? Everybody thought, oh, that's the end of dollies. We don't have to lay dolly track anymore. We'll just use a steady. Well, no. A dolly push-in is not the same as walking in with the Steadicam. So, you want to choose the right tool for the right job, but everybody wants to make the new toy do everything. I mean, we're experiencing that right now with AI. I'm the chair of the AI committee for the Motion Imaging Technology Council. And I'm saying, these are tools in the toolbox. AI is a tool of execution and should not be thought of as the form of idea origination. So these things that I do that are based in magic, that are based in the fact that we primarily work in a two-dimensional medium, and then if I put this statue over here with a 10mm lens and shoot it in an f/22 and have real people walking back over there, it's going to look like an 85-foot statue. These are very basic visual, physical concepts that people tend to forget because they forget and they want to turn off that common sense switch in their head and just use the new shiny tool. And the Titanic was not sunk by an iceberg. It was sunk by people's belief that technology would save them. Oh, it's okay if we run into something because this is the unsinkable Titanic. It's the most advanced technological ship ever made. Well, excuse me, it's a ship made out of metal. It'll sink to the bottom of the ocean if it gets damaged. People forget that. They forget common sense.
If we're at a crossroads with AI and the rise of it now and cinematography and where it is, what do you think the good way things could go is, and what do you think the bad way they could go is?
Well, the good way is that you have another very effective tool to tell stories with, okay? But that only happens if you have the active participation of people in the industry who know how to tell stories, who have a huge, long history of making really great films. And those are the people who really need to participate in what's happening, because AI is really a sociological shift. It's like the internet, it's like the printing press. It's more than just this industry. And in fact, point of fact to the AI companies, the professional motion picture industry is just maybe like 4 or 5% of their interest. Their interest is in the billions of people around the world. And then how do we sell this technology to those billions of people? That's that's the main thrust for them. And it's only recently that these companies have taken an avid interest in professional filmmakers, because every company that makes an AI model wants to have what people will think of as the most cinematic model. And they realize, oh, wait a minute, okay, cinematographers, they could explain to us why selective focus is important. They can explain to us why depth of field is important. They can explain why limited amount of fill is actually a storytelling tool and relates to character and stuff like that. So that's where we're at right now. And that's why I need all of the top level people to engage with it. I mean, I do a lot of seminars. And I will say this, and I've said it before, I am the lowest tech person that I know. I like things dirt simple. I like to shoot with a camera, a roll of film, a lens, and an actor. That's me, okay? But I'm also on the Academy Science and Technology Council. You know, like I said, I'm the chair of the AI committee for the Motion Imaging Technology Council. I occupy these spaces on all these highest levels of technology in the industry. Why? Because I'm this incredibly smart Asian guy who understands everything? No. No. It's because I have a curiosity of where these things are going, what these things actually do, what will make them do it better, and how do I rope in the other people who need to be part of this conversation. You know, so that's really kind of my talent, my contribution in this area. And in order to get these people in, I mean, I said it in Mexico last year when I did a seminar there, because some of the best cinematographers in Mexico would not come to the AI seminar because they're against it. But I know they were watching the live feed. And I said to them before I started the seminar, I said, listen, I understand completely what the animosity is based on and what the fear is based on. But the time to be afraid was 2 years ago, not now. The time to be part of guiding it where it's going to go in the future is now. And AI is like this baby who's learning how to walk. And if you don't teach it the right way to walk, it's going to climb into an oven. It's still going to develop, but it'll develop without the guidance of, you know, parents who understand what the best practices are. So it's important that everybody who has 20, 30, 40, 50 years of experience in this business be part of this dialogue, not to endorse the technology, but to really drill in the fact that we need best practices so that we can preserve the creative workflow, the creative contributions of the people who work in this industry, which is more than just writers and directors and actors. It's everybody. So the show that I'm working on right now, Baywatch. I'm directing Baywatch, okay? There's an AI element in Baywatch. And in my workflow, I come up with my shot list. If I have a script the day before I start prep, I have a complete shot list on my first morning when I come into the office, okay? These are the shots that I think are needed to tell the story the way that it's written. And it doesn't matter that I haven't seen locations. It doesn't matter that I haven't seen the sets, because it's my way of reading the script. I have terrible short-term memory, really awful. I can't remember things. I will read a script and then close it on the last page and not remember a single thing about it. And what I found is that if I start shot listing right away, and I mean right away, I don't give the script the once over. I read scene 1, and then I stop, and I go back to the top of scene 1, and I start reading it again, and I start writing down shots. You know, Parker comes into the big house. It feels ominously empty. Okay, what does ominously empty look like? Maybe it's a big wide shot of the house, and Parker is very small, so I write big wide shot and stuff like that. She sees a postcard on the bed, and she feels sad. Okay, I need to get a close-up of the postcard. I need to get a close-up of Parker. Why does she feel sad? I don't know, but you know, it's in the script. It's a story point. So that becomes the shot list that I start with. It's my impressions of what kind of shots and how many of them I think I need to shoot in order to tell the story the way it's written. And it doesn't matter whether the kitchen has an island or not. It doesn't matter if the bed is on this side of the room or that side of the room, you know. So I come in with a shot list, And then right away, I can engage with the storyboard artist on the production. I say, we've got 4 major action sequences. Let's storyboard them right now. And we sit for an hour and a half, and I tell them what the shots are. You know, he has the shot list. And I said, this is what it looks like. And we use like little toys. This character's here, camera's over here. He sketches it. So by the morning of the second day of my prep, we have storyboards for all 4 major action sequences. And then we can sit there and look at it and say, okay, these 3 setups, these are all main unit. These 2 have to be done by the second unit because they have a dedicated second unit on the production. This is marine unit. This is an underwater shot, and it's a detail shot. We can do it in our tank. This one we can't do in the tank because this involves 12 divers going to the bottom of the ocean. We have a 12-foot deep tank. So this has to be AI. And then so we have the entire landscape laid out on the second day of prep, and then they can budget realistically, and they can see, oh, okay, the underwater unit is going over budget and stuff like that, and then we can adjust the shots so that we can get within budget. And that's the way it ran. And then when we came to the point of getting AI samples, I would say, okay, you need to engage with the director of photography. I tell the AI people, because the director of photography has a specific way that he's going to light the underwater sequences. And the DP brings in the gaffer. And she says, well, I'm going to use this unit, you know, and it makes shadows this way so that when the light cuts through the water in the ocean, the sediment makes it bloom like this and stuff. And then the art director comes in and says, well, this is the look of these barrels at the bottom of the ocean because they've been there for 2 decades and stuff. So everybody has their contribution, and the AI samples then that you get are much more targeted. They're much more targeted toward a specific storytelling approach, as opposed to the slot machine crapshoot that AI can be if you just put in a prompt. Now, if you're the kind of person who's just delighted and amazed and amused by whatever you get out of it, well, that's great, but you can't make a career as a filmmaker that way because you can never repeat that success.
Well, I'm wondering how handy your experience with Skinemax is on Baywatch, but maybe not so much. In terms of stuff you can show us, because I know you can't show us Baywatch since it's in production, I think there's some other things you've done that are more timeless techniques where you know, someone might have chosen to do the AI version.
He's really good at queuing things up, isn't he?
Maybe I've seen them in advance. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's talk. Let's continue talking about the magic part of it. Let's get into Rookie. This is a classic thing. I'll show you this, and then. Okay, so when we were going to shoot that in prep, they said, well, okay, so this will be a digital effect when she gets hit by the car. I said, there's no digital anything here. I said, it's a cut. And they said, what do you mean? I said, we have the camera. She runs out there, she turns and fires, and then we cut, and she goes off and gets a cappuccino at craft service. And then we have the pickup truck with a dummy tied to it, and we just drive it across the frame, and then we cut. And we cut off the dummy, back up the truck, and we drive it through the frame again. And so what it is her running, and then this is just a traveling split screen and editorial of the truck without the dummy. And then at this point, the split is going right through her and the shot of the truck with the dummy. And then in the next frame, it becomes all about the dummy. And that was done in the 1920s, okay? And it still works today. But people go down that, oh, well, it's a digital effect. No, it's not a digital effect, you know? I mean, we encountered some of the same thing a little bit on Baywatch, where this character is supposed to get ejected from this water sled when it runs up on the shore and flies through the air and hits the ground. They're like, well, digital stunt actor and stuff. I said, no, let's actually do a stunt. Let's tie a rope and do a pull when the guy hits the sand and stuff, and he flies through the air, and it looked great. It's so much more fun.
So much more fun. That's exactly what I was going to say. You took the words out of my mouth. Like no one grows up wanting to be like, you know what I want to do with my life is sit at a keyboard and prompt. That's what I want to do.
You know, there always needs to be the human element, I think, in everything that we do. Certainly human origination as technologies come into play, but. And Doug Shapiro, when he spoke at the Television Academy, said it. He said, nobody wants to turn on the TV and watch AI's Got Talent. You know, they want to see real people struggle through things and persevere and achieve success. Always.
That's probably actually going to be a show in the dystopia version of this. So with the ASC and chairing that committee, as you look at hybrid models, where I think those of us who do like being on set and do like working with other people, where do you see technology now and going in terms of being an aid to what we can accomplish as filmmakers, as opposed to just the full sail prompting version? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's very true that the more creatively, the more artistically specific you are about what you want, the more frustrating it is to work with AI. Because it'll throw you curveballs. I mean, there was a one shot that I was doing of an Asian man who wakes up in the dark and then finds that he's sealed in a coffin, and he's screaming to try to get out, and then the camera would rise out of the coffin and through the ground. And then we see that we're on a sunny field with children playing and nobody can hear him. And for hours, I worked with an AI programmer, content creator. I was trying to get that shot. And the AI didn't like the darkness, so it kept turning on a light. And I said, well, where's that light coming from? He's in a coffin. You know, there's no light and stuff like that. And finally, when we got it to make it believably dark in the coffin, they turned him into a Caucasian guy for some reason. I said, what about the prompt made him white now? You know, so to get him back to being Asian and to have the lights out was a struggle and stuff. So the technologies get refined and get into a better space. Before we were struggling with having predictable repeatability, you know, because you need predictable repeatability, you know, and we more or less kind of conquered that at this point. We need 4K resolution, you know, and that's possible now. So it's getting there where it can actually be a usable tool for professional filmmakers, and especially valuable, I think, for the people who know what they want. But the thing to remember, because those of us who don't consider ourselves to be technological savants, it's important to know that you do not need to know everything, but you do need to know what you want. Because you have to be able to communicate what you want. And then there are people who are technologists that you work with who will say, oh, okay, no, you don't want to use this AI program, you want to use this one, because this one accomplishes what you're talking about much cleaner and much better and stuff. Okay, great. So, that's the world I live in right now. There are a couple of AI people that I use regularly when I'm working on stuff for shows like my vertical show that I just did. So we have this kind of mix and match kind of feel to it, but it's really important to know what you want, and it's really important to not assume that technology will just take care of everything.
One of the things I relish about what AI can't do now, which I'm sure it will be able to do in the future, is it's really bad with mixed race people, because there's enough white people in the model and there are enough Asian people in the model, but AI cannot make me. It like turns me into one or the other every time, and it's really fun.
Does it turn you into a Mexican person?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm like I'm like Latino in AI. So it's fun to see that, because eventually it will be able to do it. But I sort of relish when it can't do things now. Last question before we open it up to Q&A. You mentioned verticals, and so that's one opportunity now, or the microdrama space with everyone watching on their phones. You had done a series many years ago, a feature many years ago, and now technology has changed and consumption habits have changed, and all of a sudden you're doing a new version of it. Can you tell us about, using that as an example, can you tell us about the opportunities that are there for filmmakers today that weren't back when you did the feature version?
Well, I mean, verticals or microdramas, and have been popular for several years. Most of the product was financed by Chinese companies, and then reshot. They took the same scripts and reshot them in English in the United States, and it had a huge following. And on the movie nights that I do, on Saturday nights, when I'm in town, I do a movie night. Usually I show a double feature and have served dinner in between and for my mentees, and then we talk about those movies and what made them great, or sometimes not so great, because you learn as much or not more from a movie that failed than a movie that worked. But a lot of those young people work on vertical productions, actors and directors and crew people, and they would come and they complain at movie night. Oh boy, this vertical series that I just did was so stupid. The dialogue was, I was telling Yusak and Jeff today that the dialogue, and she showed me on one of the scripts, was, "Why for are you doing this thing to me right now?" That was the line of dialogue that they wanted her character to say. And she said, "Can I just say, why are you doing this?" It's like, so because the translation from the original Chinese script was just fed through ChatGPT, and it was never corrected and stuff. So I listened to all of this, and the way my mind works is it's like, okay, there's something else going on below this, because at that point vertical productions were a $4 billion industry, and this year it's pushing a $12 billion international industry. So there's clearly something there. And so I started to research on what these things were. I'd watched them, and then I started to look at the demographics. Okay, who's watching this content? And it was because it was mostly rom-coms or light bondage kind of scenarios. And when I studied the demographics, it was primarily women. It was primarily women from like 19 years old to mid-40s were the biggest audience for vertical productions. So I was like, okay, what else does that demographic watch? They watch true crime and horror material. I was like, okay, so what do I have in the true crime and horror field that I can spin off from? Well, I have that movie that I made 18 years ago, whatever, Megan is Missing. That's got categorized as true crime and horror. I was like, I could spin off a vertical series from that, using the original actors playing themselves. They would play the actors who were in Megan is Missing 18 years ago, and then turn it into their recollections of true crime events that were part of research, and then it turns into a horror story or whatever on its own. And so I called up Lionsgate, who has the distribution rights to my original movie, Megan is Missing. Their rights were going to expire at the end of this year. And I said, I have something that we can spin off of Megan is Missing, because Megan is Missing didn't make huge amounts of money, but it made consistent money.
Well, and it became a TikTok
It
phenomenon.
became, yeah, it went viral. It went viral 3 times over the life of the movie, purely by happenstance, really. Because after we made the movie, we self-financed. By we, I mean Mark Grignani and Melanie Grignani, my 2 partners and I. We self-financed the movie because I knew it was going to be so grim. I didn't think anybody would put up money for it. So we put up the money, and we had $35,000 between the three of us, and we made the movie. We shot the entire film in 8.5 days for $35,000 with a cast of 13 to 16-year-old kids. And when the movie was done, we submitted it to film festivals. 57 film festivals we submitted to over the course of a year. Got turned down by every single one. And we did get letters saying, you know, well, we love the movie, but it's so controversial, we can't show it, you know, because we have corporate sponsors we have to answer to. So I thought, okay, we'll go straight to distributors. And so for another year, we went to every distributor, and everybody turned us down. And then finally, Anchor Bay Stars Entertainment, which was a big company, called up and said, listen, 12 months ago, you sent us Megan is Missing. We watched it, and we said no. Every month since then, we talk about the movie in our acquisition meeting, and we debate, should we pick it up? And we decide no. It's been 12 months now, and we're still talking about your movie, so we should probably pick it up, and we'll put it out there. But they had an agenda, because they had a 7-picture contract to deliver to Netflix and Redbox, and they were short one horror film. You know, they had to deliver like 2 action pictures, 2 romances and stuff. They were short one horror film. So they picked up Megan is Missing as that 7th movie, the horror film, and they put it out in their contract to Netflix and Redbox. So it went out there with no information, no posters, no advertisement, no nothing. And about 4 months into being on Netflix, some kid rented it, probably by accident, watched it, freaked out, called all of his friends, and then they watched it and they freaked out, and it went viral. That was the first time it went viral. So it's gone viral now every 5 years or so. The last time, as you said, was on TikTok in 2020. Yeah, 2020. It went viral. And how I found out it was going viral on TikTok is because my teenage son said, Dad, your movie is viral on TikTok. I was like, really? He said, you got to get a TikTok account and say something, because I didn't have a TikTok account, you know. So I got a TikTok account, and I recorded when I would show the movie, when I would project the movie for audiences, because we traveled around the country doing that, I would give them warnings about how triggering the movie can be and specific points in the movie that are very disturbing and stuff. So I recorded myself giving the same warnings on TikTok, and 12.5 million people viewed my warning in the first 4 days. And I was like, oh, okay, this is actually kind of big. And then Deadline and Dread Central and all these online forums started contacting me for interviews and to talk about the movie. So it had a life of its own. So doing an extension of that into a vertical series appealed to Lionsgate tremendously. And we did it very quickly. The whole shoot was 9 days, and it'll drop in the fall. I think October is when they plan to drop it. So it's that extension. But I will point out that it's union in terms of the entire crew. I did it under IA contracts, and it's union for myself and my first assistant director and my second assistant director. So it's a DGA contract as well. And it was important for me. I mean, SAG has been doing a very good job of trying to get the vertical space under union contracts for their performers. I didn't see anybody doing that for below the line. And so I wanted this to be union for all the below the line workers. And 5 of them on my production said, you know, I was able to requalify for my health care because of your shoot. And that's exactly the point, especially in this environment that we're in right now where people are scrambling for jobs. There's so many verticals being shot, they should be under union contracts.
Well, I love wrapping it up with something that came full circle, where you have been so persistent throughout your career that you scrappily went and made a movie for $35,000 a decade ago, more than a decade ago, and then it came back around and went viral, and now you got people employed and with healthcare thinking of a new version. I think it's a great inspirational way to put a cap on everything we've talked about. So I'd like to open it up to questions in the audience. Anyone for Michael? We have a microphone that we'll bring to you as well.
Hi there. First off, thank you so much for just sharing your very human story. It's very relatable to, I'm sure, a lot of us in many different ways. And clearly you care, about people that you work with, whether it's mentees or union workers. And I just wonder if the AI element is a slippery slope, where at first it's like, oh, maybe we don't know how to do this shot, we don't have the budget for it, we can use AI as a tool to do that. But the people who would have made that shot are now missing out on an opportunity. And what happens as that one shot that now we can get with AI turns into a greater and greater piece of the content until it consumes the whole piece. Do you have any fears around that or any thoughts?
Yeah, well, you have to think about who are the best people to protect the product that's being made, the movie that's being made. You're right, it's the filmmakers, right? So you have to have filmmakers who are knowledgeable enough and responsible enough and are high enough in the system to be able to have that voice. And it's taking responsibility really for not just the product that you're doing, not just the movie that you're working on, but for where the industry is going. I mean, part of the reason why I'm in so many committees in the motion picture industry, either in the Motion Picture Academy and the ASC and, Local 600 and all this stuff, is because something my dad told me years ago. He said, never become a member of any organization that you're not willing to be in charge of and run. And I understood that. It's like, okay, if it's important for me to be a member of this organization, then I should be an active member in where that organization is going to go and what it's going to do. So the same thing applies to anything, like AI that comes along, and it's really, I think, a point where you're going to see people either give up or rise to the occasion. At the ASC, there were a couple of cinematographers who were vehemently against AI, who didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I brought them in to my committee and exposed them to this and that and asked the questions. Okay, what do you think about this? What do you think it should not be doing and stuff like that? And they became experts in AI, more so than even me. So, you have to be in the game in order to change the game. I mean, in terms of Asians, we talk about, we're underrepresented. I mean, this is not just in the industry, it's just as a whole. And, we talk about the fact that we don't have representation. And we talked about this at the DGA a lot, at the Asian American Committee years ago. And then, I said, well, what are the committees that are important to the DGA as an organization? And we said, well, special projects of the National Board, this political action committee and stuff. I said, well, that's where we volunteer. Those things have nothing to do with us being Asian, but it has everything to do with how the DGA operates, what it runs, and what's important to it. And so we volunteered for all those positions, and now there's like 3 Asians on the national board. I'm the co-chair of the Special Projects Committee and Digital Day, and we have Asians everywhere, and so the other committees are like, wow, there's like Asians and all these levels of power everywhere. In the DGA, how did you guys do that? How did you infiltrate, the DGA? You really have to understand the landscape of what you're getting into and where the needs are and where you can affect change, because you can scream at the wind as much as you want, as loud as your voice is, and not get anywhere, because it just gets filtered out as noisy complaints. But if you are one of the people who is an upper level of power, who has the ability to influence policy and stuff, people are going to listen. And that's what we always need to do. So we need to get there in order to affect the kinds of protections and influences on something like AI, like what you're talking about.
Hi there, my name is Patrick Wong. I'm an architectural photographer. My question for you is, for the past few years, I constantly hear there's a fear of AI, and I presume it's because it's taking over jobs. And I'm kind of curious as to when, the acronym CGI and then AI, they're kind of blurring, it seems like to me. But what are the jobs that are being lost? What is AI doing that better than people can do in regards to your industry?
Well, some of that is subjective. It's like somebody asked me, what would you never want AI to do for you? And I said, I never want to direct digital actors. That has absolutely no appeal to me because I love the unpredictability. When I give an actor, after a take, a one-sentence adjustment, I love seeing what that actor comes back with. If it was going to be a digital actor, an AI actor, that I had to program to do that, and I have to program in the lift of the eyebrow and all this stuff, sucks away any reason from my being associated with the movie, Well, in a way, but, the thing about, I want to get to the core of your question, but you phrased it in a very specific way. What was it again?
I mean, people fear, being replaced by AI,
Yeah.
losing jobs.
Okay, so
Totally
the thing that you have to understand is every technological change that happens in the film industry eliminates jobs, eliminates positions. But every technological change creates more positions than it eliminates. I mean, you look at the transition from silent movies to sound. Yes, we got rid of the piano player on set, but we added the sound recorder, we added the boom person, we added the sound mixer and stuff. Same thing with the transition from black and white to color. Color processes required a lot more oversight and a lot more people doing that. Same thing with going from film to digital. Okay, there was all that malarkey about, digital cameras means you have less crew and less equipment. Bullshit. No, we have more than ever right now. So every technological change requires people who are trained in how to support that technology. There's no such thing as a technology that does not need to be supported by humans. Okay, the trick is you need to know where that technology needs to be supported. I was talking to one of the principal technology vendors for the Sphere, for the Wizard of Oz at the Sphere. And they said, in order to accomplish this, we needed to have 800 AI programming technicians work on the job. Okay, 600 of them had to be trained because there was not enough people who were trained in how to make that work to work on this job. Okay, that's 600 positions that they didn't think they needed to have. Okay, so you have to think outside the box a little bit. I mean, when I talk at film schools and somebody says to me, when is the industry coming back to what it was? When are the jobs coming back to what it used to be? And I tell them, I said, it's not coming back. It's not going to be the way it used to be. If that's the hope you're holding on to, you need to get rid of that and think outside the box and see what the next step is for you, because that's not going to happen. You have to create your own opportunity, whether it be regarding these new technologies, whether it be in whatever distribution format exists out there. What is your relationship to the content that you're creating, and what is the most effective way to get people to see it? And all these things are littered with pitfalls, like the vertical series things that we were talking about. So many people have talked to me about verticals now, wanting to get into it. One person said, I got together some friends, we put together $90,000, we're going to make a vertical series. And they're hoping that'll be their entryway in there. But you look at the market right now, okay, they make that vertical series, they have to sell it somewhere, because they're not going to establish their own platform for distribution. Who's going to watch it? So they go to the big distributors for vertical series, and those people know, okay, these people have put everything they had into this, we'll just pay them $20,000 for it and take it, And they get it really dirt cheap. So if you're going to get into that space, my opinion is if you're going to get it, you're an independent, you're getting into that space, you need to not raise $90,000. You need to raise like $500,000. You need to do like 10 of them, so that in a variety of genres, so that you have a catalog of stuff that would be of value to somebody, and you've proven yourself as a consistent producer of these things, and not somebody who's just put everything in a one shot. So you have to think outside the box, and you have to think bigger.
That's a great place to wrap up. I think we're going to be here for a little bit of time hanging out after, but you're about to fly off and go shoot an episode of Baywatch, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for making time
Another
for us.
one, yeah.
Another episode. Thank you for coming here to Austin.
All right, thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We're going to head out and just mingle outside, and you can meet Michael and Ryan, ask them some more questions. We have some sodas and waters out there for you guys as well. But thank you guys for coming.